Let's explore another of the frequently asked questions about free motion quilting. Today's a biggie. We're talking tension. Hey guys, welcome back to Frances Quilts. Today we are continuing in our series of frequently asked questions about free motion quilting, and we're going to tackle a biggie: tension issues. We all know that horrible feeling when we've been quilting along and everything looks great and we're so excited about our stitch length and everything else, and we turn that quilt over and we go, oh man, my tension's all messed up because we have threads going everywhere. So today we're going to tackle what tension is, what may cause some of those issues, and what can you do about them. I hope by the end of this video you're going to have some good suggestions. But before we start anything, we need to talk about what tension is. Come on in closer and we'll have a look. So for this discussion of tension, you need to use your imagination. We're going to pretend that this is a cross section of a quilt. This is the top here, this is the backing here, and this white in the middle is our batting. We're also going to pretend that this colored thread is our top thread and this blue thread is our bobbin thread. Now in the stitching process, these two become intertwined like this. So we have a hook here where the two are hooked together. The appropriate place for that hook is in the middle of the batting like you see it right now. But what tension does is it causes a tug of war between these two. So they're fighting here for position, for whoever is going to have the most strength. So if you have the bobbin threads coming up to the top like this, it means that this top thread is winning the tug of war. We don't want that to happen. So we're going to loosen the tension up here so that the bobbin thread can pull those back down like that. If, however, you have the opposite happening and your top threads are coming through to the back of your quilt, that means that this bobbin thread is the one winning the tug of war. Now we can change the tension in the bobbin case, but we often don't do that. So instead of changing this, we're going to increase the tension on this top thread so that it is going to pull it back into place. So an appropriate tension means that these two pieces, these two threads, are at the same tension with each other, so one is not winning that tug of war battle. Now we know that seeing bumps of thread on the top or the bottom of the quilt sandwich is a good indication that you're having issues with your tension. But you can also get thread nests. Now we know what those are. Those are when you turn it over and oh my gosh, it is just the biggest mess that you've ever seen. Maybe you're seeing skipped stitches. You're going along fine and then it'll do 2 or 3 stitches that it'll skip and then it'll pick them back up again. That's another sign of a tension issue. And finally, what if your thread breaks? I don't mean just once or twice, but if it breaks over and over and over again, that's probably a tension issue that's causing that. So we know now what tension issues might look like. Let's talk about what we can do about them. The first thing I want to encourage you to do is to clean your machine really well. If you get all of that lint and everything stuck, particularly in the bobbin area, it is going to mess with your tension. So before you do anything else, unthread your machine and clean out that bobbin area. That may be the solution right there. While you have the bobbin out, make sure that there are no little threads in there. If there are, get you a pair of tweezers and pull those threads out. Get that area completely clean. And the second thing to do that we all know, rethread your machine. It's kind of like your computer when you turn it off and back on again. Sometimes just the process of rethreading it will fix the problem. I know on my sit-down long arm, it is very easy for that thread to come out of the tension discs. If it isn't going through those tension discs, there's no tension on it at all. And boy, is it a mess. Trust me, I know. And we also know about changing the needle. Sometimes that needle can have a little burr on it or maybe has gotten a little blunt, and that's going to cause that thread to not go all the way down in the fabric and to meet up with that bobbin. So be sure that you have a good needle and that everything is set there. Oh, and one more thing. So you don't have the needle fall down that hole, put a piece of fabric over it, put a post-it note over it, do something to cover that hole before you start messing with that needle. Believe me, it's a whole lot easier than having to pull that needle out of the inside of your machine. You've rethreaded and you started sewing again, and maybe it's okay, but still just a little bit of that bobbin thread that's popping up on the top of the fabric. Now you want to start adjusting your tension dial. But don't do it all at one time. Don't do a great big turn this way or turn this way. Go in tiny increments. And honestly, before you do it, write down or take a picture of exactly where it is right now, because it's so easy once you have adjusted this and adjusted that, and then maybe I'll try this and maybe I'll try that. You can't remember where you started out. And remember, when you started out, it actually had a relatively decent stitch. So make sure you know what setting you're starting from before you start turning those dials. Now, what if you're using a specialty thread? If you're using monofilament thread, or you're using a metallic thread or something like that, you may have to adjust that tension some. You may have to lower that top tension a little bit. On the same vein, think about what your batting is. If you're using a super high loft batting, that tension may be a little bit different than it would be from a regular cotton batting. You may also need to adjust your tension if you're using either a loose weave or a very tight weave, such as a batik fabric. Those two things will make a difference for how that thread is traveling through the fabric, and that's going to affect your tension as well. Now, I do have some good news for those of you who use a machine that doesn't have a drop-in bobbin, but uses a bobbin case like this one. There is a product that you can buy called a TOA tension gauge. Now, it's a little bit pricey, I'm going to tell you that, but I love it for checking my tension. Let me show you how it works. You thread the bobbin in the bobbin case and then put it into this little machine. Then you wind it around here and pull down. You can see that it is giving me a number here for what my tension is. I can then check that tension against a guide that tells me what weight thread needs what tension. And then if I need to make any adjustments, I can use my screwdriver and very easily adjust that screw on the bobbin case. It is a wonderful product, and for me, I love knowing that my bobbin tension is right. I know that. So if I know that, that means I only have to work on the top tension. I'll leave a link below so you can check it out. Just be sure you get the right size for your machine. One last thing to say. If you are using a free motion foot like this that has a screw on this spring, you may have to mess with that screw and play with that a little bit. Let me show you why. So as I turn this screw, you see one direction makes the foot go down closer to the bed of the machine. If I have it down too far, I'm not going to be able to move those fabrics. It's going to be too tight in there. If, however, I bring it up too far and there's too big of a gap right here, then that means that the fabric is not going to be held in place well enough, and you will get skip stitches there as well. So if you have a foot that looks like that, that's one more thing that you can think about and one more thing that you can check. Finally, you have your tension perfect. You've adjusted everything. That hook is sitting exactly in the middle of the batting where it should be. It looks fantastic. Please, at this point, write it down, take a picture, do something that will remind you the next time you sit down to do free motion quilting that you know exactly what your tension settings need to be. I promise it will save a whole lot of angst as you get ready to free motion quilt the next time. So, today we talked about what tension is. We learned how to assess the problems to know if we're having tension issues, and we learned a whole bunch of ideas for ways to fix those tension issues. If you have other tips and tricks for how to fix your tension, please put them in the comments below so that we all can learn from them. I'm sure there are more things out there than what I've thought of, so I'd love to hear from you. And if you have other free motion quilting questions that you'd like answered, please put those in the comments as well. I'd love to be able to answer all of your questions. And stay tuned for the next installment of Frequently Asked Questions for Free Motion Quilting. Thank you so much for joining me today. And as always, I look forward to seeing you next time on Frances Quilts. Remember, if you like what you've seen, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please check out my website and daily blog at francesquilts.com, and I can be found on Facebook and Instagram at Frances Quilts. Thanks so much for joining me. Hope to see you again soon.